Buckle up because the US and China just kicked off an economic war that's shaking the planet. Trump's slamming 104% tariffs on Chinese goods, and China's hitting back with a 34% wall on American staples like soybeans, plus a chokehold on rare earths that could stall tech everywhere. Markets are tanking, $10 trillion gone in a week, and Trump's out here, saying groceries are cheap while prices say otherwise. Canada's boycotting, Germany's raging, and China's cozying up to Australia for gas, leaving US LNG in the dust. Meanwhile, the White House can't answer a straight question, and Wanda Sykes is roasting Trump's whole vibe. Is this a genius play or a global meltdown? Stick around. You won't believe what's coming next. China didn't waste any time clapping back at Trump's moves, hitting the US with a hefty 34% tariff on everything America sends their way. We're talking soybeans, sorghum, pork, you name it, stuff that's the backbone of Trump's big farm states. Last year alone, the US shipped about $15 billion worth of agricultural goods to China, with soybeans making up over 60% of that haul. Now, all those numbers are hanging by a thread, because China's building this tariff wall higher every day. But Trump, he's not even blinking. He came right back swinging, jacking up tariffs on Chinese imports to a brutal 50%. Add that to what was already there, and you're looking at a combined rate of 104%, the highest ever in US-China trade history. People are freaking out because this isn't just some small spat anymore. It's a full-on economic showdown. A $20 toy could jump to $40. A $400 iPhone might hit $800, and don't even get me started on cars. We could see prices spiking by $6,000 to $12,000 a pop. Trump says it's all about punishing Beijing. But China's not totally slamming the door shut. They're dropping hints about maybe working out a new trade deal, something like what went down during Trump's first term. Still, the US isn't budging, and talks are stuck in this crazy deadlock. This whole mess started earlier this year when Trump rolled out the first wave of tariffs, 10% in February. Another 10% in March, then bam, 34% just last week. Now he's threatening to pile on that extra 50%. It's wild to think how fast this escalated. And honestly, it's only the beginning of what could turn into a global disaster. So things didn't stop with just tariffs flying back and forth. China took it up a notch and hit the US where it really hurts. On top of slapping that 34% tariff on American goods, they pulled out a bigger card, tightening the screws on rare earth exports. If you're wondering what that means, these are the materials that power pretty much everything high-tech these days, like electric car batteries, military radars, semiconductors, even night vision gear. Stuff like dysprosium, terbium, and neodymium might sound like sci-fi gibberish, but they're the lifeblood of modern tech, and China controls about 90% of the global supply. Now, US companies wanting a piece of that action have to jump through hoops, applying for licenses that are a total pain to get approved. Analysts are straight up calling this a sneaky export ban, and it's got everyone sweating. Beijing didn't just sit there quietly after Trump's tariff barrage. They went full-on strategic with this move. It's not just about soybeans or pork anymore. This is about flexing muscle in a way that could cripple American tech industries. Imagine trying to build the next big thing in Silicon Valley, or keep the military rolling without these key elements. It's a nightmare waiting to happen. China's basically saying, you want to play hardball? Fine. Let's see how you handle this. And while Trump's team is still pushing that 104% tariff wall, China's rare earth squeeze is a reminder they've got some serious leverage in this fight. This isn't just a trade spat now. It's a whole different level of economic warfare. All right, so China's rare earth play was a gut punch. But the real chaos hit when the market started crumbling, and it was wild. Just one night after Trump doubled down with his no pause on tariff speech, Asian stock markets went into total freefall. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index tanked over 13%, the nastiest drop in almost 30 years, while Shanghai's composite nosedived more than 7%, wiping out $500 billion like it was nothing. Investors over there were losing their minds, and it didn't take long for the shockwaves to slam Wall Street too. Within days, US markets were down 10 to 15%, and get this, over $10 trillion in market value. Just vanished in a single week. People started panic selling, hedge funds bolted to gold and treasuries, and one expert called it shock therapy that could kill the patient. It's insane how fast this spiraled out of control. Trump's tariff threats didn't just rattle the US and China, they dragged the whole global economy into the mess. Regular folks watching their 401ks shrink were freaking out, while big players scrambled to figure out what's next. The vibe was pure panic, like no one knew if this was the start of something even uglier. All it took was one press conference to light the fuse. And now everyone's wondering if these two superpowers are about to tank everything. This isn't just about trade numbers anymore, it's a domino effect, hitting every corner of the planet. So, while the markets were crashing hard, Trump stepped up to the mic and made everything even messier with some wild contradictions. He walked into the Oval Office with the world already on edge, dropped the bomb that there are no plans to pause the tariffs, and then flipped the script by saying we need open borders. Wait, what? This is the same guy who's built his whole thing on cracking down on immigration. So people were straight up confused. Then he went off about taking over the Gaza Strip and relocating Palestinians somewhere else, which had folks drawing parallels to some dark historical moves. The media was scrambling, markets froze, and even his own team looked lost, trying to keep up with the guy. But it didn't stop there. Trump started talking about the economy, zeroing in on groceries like it's the magic word. He claimed food prices, interest rates, and energy costs are dropping, saying stuff like egg prices fell 79%. People listening were like, have you seen my grocery bill lately? The reality's hitting different, with Consumer Reports, showing costs are still sky high for most families. He's leaning hard into this feel-good messaging, banking on groceries tugging at heartstrings, even if the numbers don't back him up. It's a classic move, focusing on something relatable to Dodge, the bigger mess he's stirring. Meanwhile, the world's watching, wondering if he's just throwing curveballs to keep everyone off balance. Now, while Trump's tossing out wild cards, the rest of the world isn't just sitting back watching the show, they're hitting back hard. The European Union didn't waste a second, slapping a 25% tariff on U.S. goods after Trump's moves started piling up. Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz came out swinging, saying this whole tariff mess is wrong and only making losers on both sides. German car giants like Volkswagen and BMW are stressing out, with 30% of their exports heading to the U.S., and they're worried the global supply chain's about to snap. Canada's not playing nice either. They got hit with a 25% tariff on everything, except oil and gas, and Trump even floated the idea of making them the 51st state to dodge the fees. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called it a sovereignty attack, and the new PM Mark Carney's pushing a boycott on American stuff, riding a wave of Canadian pride. Mexico's keeping it low-key but sharp, staying quiet until March 2025, when the U.S. dropped another 25% tariff on them. President Claudia Sheinbaum called it baseless, but said they'd strike back smart when the time's right. Meanwhile, China's out there cozying up to the EU and developing nations, building trade ties that don't need the U.S. at all. Everyone's fed up, and it's looking like America's getting left out in the cold, while the rest of the world redraws the map. Okay, while the world's picking sides in this trade war, let's talk about something that's got everyone scratching their heads. The way Trump's team figures out these tariffs. It's honestly kind of bananas. They've got this formula where they take the U.S. trade deficit with a country, say China's $295.4 billion, and divide it by total imports from that country, like $438.9 billion for China. That spits out a number, something like 67.3%, and boom, that's the tariff rate. Sounds simple, right? But here's the catch. It doesn't actually look at what tariffs those countries are charging the U.S., so it's like throwing darts blindfolded. This method's got people calling it a total mess. Economic experts are out here saying it's a shoddy calculation that doesn't match reality, yet it's driving these massive decisions. Countries like Vietnam or Cambodia get slapped with high tariffs, even when they're not charging the U.S. crazy rates, which makes folks think they're getting a raw deal. Get this, some countries the U.S. has a trade surplus with are still getting hit with a 10% tariff. It's wild, and it's painting a warped picture of global trade. Businesses are struggling to keep up, regular people are facing higher prices, and nobody's sure how to plan when the rules seem made up on the fly. This formula's not just quirky, it's shaking things up in all the wrong ways. So, while Trump's tariff math is throwing everyone for a loop, China's out here, making some slick moves that are really putting the U.S. on the ropes. In March 2025, they just dropped a bombshell, cutting off all LNG imports from the U.S., which was worth a cool $2.4 billion a year. That's a huge hit, especially since the U.S. was the world's top LNG exporter in 2024, pumping out over 91 million tons. Instead of sticking with American gas, China turned around and signed a $1.5 billion deal with Australia, locking in 600,000 tons of LNG a year starting in 2027. Australia's stuff is 20% cheaper and gets there 10 days faster, so it's a no-brainer for Beijing. This shift isn't just about money, it's a power play. China's been dialing back on U.S. LNG since 2019, dropping it to just 5.4% of their imports by 2024, and now they're cozying up with places like Qatar, Russia, and the EU. While U.S. terminals are stuck with piles of unsold gas and canceled contracts, Europe's jumping on China's redirected shipments to dodge Russian supply issues. Germany, the Netherlands, and Italy are all in, beefing up their ports to handle it. Meanwhile, Australia's stealing the spotlight as China's new energy buddy, leaving the U.S. watching its market share slip away fast. This is next-level chess, and America's getting outplayed. All right, so China's flipping the energy game on its head, but back home, things are getting downright messy for Trump's crew. The White House press room turned into a circus when spokesperson Caroline Leavitt tried to dodge some tough questions. Someone asked why Trump told automakers not to hike prices, if tariffs are supposed to save taxpayers, and she just mumbled about a private conversation without giving a straight answer. Then a reporter brought up a leaked military plan, and all she had was, "The case is closed," leaving vets and families furious for real answers. People are desperate for clarity, but it's crickets from the top. On the flip side, Trump's out there saying retirees shouldn't worry about stock market swings, claiming he's got it all under control like he did last time. But the Atlanta Federal Reserve's showing GDP shrinking by 3.8%, a far cry from the 3.9% growth they predicted weeks ago. Then there's this deportation mess in Maryland. A dad with no record got shipped to El Salvador. Despite a judge's ruling and Leavitt's response, who does that judge work for? Even comedian Wanda Sykes is piling on, roasting Trump's maturity, saying a 70-year-old shouldn't need lessons on self-control. She's cracking jokes about his hair and Tiffany's Secret Service detail, but it's hitting a nerve. People are fed up with the chaos and contradictions shaking up the country.